Hello everyone and welcome back to Beatley Tones Beatles channel. How you all doing? I hope you're all doing well. Well, unless you've been living in a cave, you'll know that today has been a mammoth day in Beatles history. The first episode of the Get Back docuseries has dropped, Peter Jackson's film, and hopefully you've been able to watch it. If you haven't watched it yet and you're planning on watching it, this video is going to contain spoilers, so I'm just warning you of that. Couple of things I just wanted to say. If you haven't subscribed to Disney Plus yet, it's not too late. It's just a streaming service like Netflix, so you can join whenever you like, and you can watch the programs whenever you like. You don't have to watch them on the day that they drop, and of course you can cancel your membership once you've watched the Get Back stuff, if that's all you want it for. So just wanted to say that. Now, as a sort of an overview, I'm just going to say this is absolutely fantastic. I have loved it. I've loved the first episode. It lasted, we thought it was going to be 2 hours. It ended up being 2 hours and 36 minutes. Not sure why, but I'm glad that it did. I mean, we've got so much detail here. It's incredible. The program is being broadcast in 5.1 in Ultra HD and in Dolby Vision as well. So if you've got a surround sound system, then make sure you watch this on your TV and not on your laptop or your iPad or your computer or anything, because you won't get the full benefit of how fantastic it looks and how fantastic it sounds. It is absolutely superb. I'm not disappointed at all. So the way I'm going to do this review is I'm not going to use the dates. I'm going to use day 1, day 2, day 3, because obviously they didn't work over weekends and stuff. So the first episode goes from day 1 to day 7, which, if you're interested in terms of calendar dates, that's January the 2nd, 1969 to January the 10th, 1969. I will, of course, be doing a video tomorrow night after episode 2, and then again on Saturday after episode 3. So please subscribe to the channel by hitting the notification button over there. Give the video a like and hit the notification bell, and you won't miss a thing. So in the comments below, do tell me the bits that you loved, bits that you didn't like so much, anything that I have interpreted incorrectly or whatever. Just tell me about your own Get Back episode 1 experience. So day 1, the first episode sort of starts off with a sort of a 10-minute skip through the Beatles' histories, going right back to 1956, in spite of all the danger, and it goes through not all the albums, but little highlights from the albums, bits of Hard Day's Night, bits of Help and Pepper, and all that sort of stuff, right up until sort of about 1968, where they first start talking about doing this, this TV documentary and filming them making an album. I guess this is there, for people that are casual viewers that may not know the story. And I guess for them it's it's quite useful. People that are subscribe to this channel, very familiar with with the whole story. I know. So there's probably nothing, you know, in there that's going to take you by surprise. And I think that from what follows that, I think there's probably too much detail for the casual watcher of this. But I'm not complaining because I've just loved every minute of it. But there is so much stuff here. I understand that tomorrow's episode is going to be 3 hours long, rather than 2 hours that was originally advertised. Anyway, I've sort of made notes, so excuse me if I sort of look down at my notes while I'm going through this, because it's quite a lot to get through. So day one sort of starts with the Beatles in the studio, and John is just standing up with his guitar and he's playing Child of Nature just on his own. Obviously the song that eventually became Jealous Guy from the Imagine album, but it just sounds lovely. And then they all sit there. The next sort of scene is you see them. They're all sat down around the drum kit, all sort of, you know, facing into each other, and they're learning "Don't Let Me Down," and it's really nice seeing them sort of working together on that. You know, it's a new song, and they're all learning their parts sort of as they go. Then there's other scenes where whenever Michael, you'll notice this throughout this whole episode, whenever Michael Lindsay Hogg is in the film, all he wants to talk about is where they're going to do the live show, and he suggests that you know, it's got to be like the best show ever because you're the Beatles. Therefore it's got to be the best show ever, and we should go abroad. And he's coming up with all these exotic locations like amphitheatres in Libya and places like that. And I'll get onto it later, but he comes up with some really stupid ideas as well. So when he suggests that they go abroad, Paul pipes up. And says, "Well, haven't you heard? Ringo doesn't want to go abroad, so it's just going to be us three and Jimmy Nicol probably, if he can do it." So if you don't know who Jimmy Nicol is, he was the drummer that took Ringo's place on a 1965 tour. I think it was Australia, when Ringo had his tonsils out. So it's a harking back to, you know, the early days, a little bit of a joke, and it's quite nice to see. What I should also have mentioned was that as each character, if you like, is introduced onto the set, you get a caption with their name, so you know who everyone is, like Lynn Johns, Michael Lindsay Hogg, and obviously all the Beatles and Yoko, and also some parts of the dialogue has got subtitles as well, which can be useful, and it can also be distracting. So a little tip is that I'd keep away from the subtitles unless you actually can't hear what they're saying, because really you want to be sort of focusing on their faces, because their faces say as much as the words that they actually say. And if you don't catch anything, then just pause it and go back and then have a look at it with the subtitles. But try not to read the subtitles as they come up. I know that's quite hard to do, but because it can be a little bit distracting, and you're better off focusing on the visuals rather than the words. So day two sort of starts with George sort of thumbing through a copy of Beatles Monthly and basically taking the piss out of it. And I think that the reason for that is because they were going to run. They did end up running a competition in Beatles Monthly for the fans that were going to get tickets for this live show. So I don't know, he was having a thumb through it. I don't know why. Then we see Ringo playing a new song of his, which is called "Taking a Trip to Carolina." He's only got like a couple of lines. He's playing it on the piano, and then they go through a few of the old songs that they wrote before they were famous. just fun, because I know you love me, won't you please say goodbye, and then One After 909, which is the first one that we kind of, really recognise, and they kind of recorded in 1963, but never put it out. George talks a bit about Billy Preston. Now, there's no hint that Billy Preston is going to be joining these sessions at this time, but he's talking about him as part of Ray Charles's band, and saying that he takes all the solos now in the band. So he's kind of bigging up Billy Preston at this point. You then see them go into a bit of a silly version of Obladi Oblada, and then the song Midnight Special. And then they get back to work on I've Got a Feeling, and they're practicing the bridge. All these years I've been wondering why that part where Paul is going way too high on it, and he's asking John to harmonise even higher, and John is getting nowhere near it at all, and in the end they kind of give up on it. And then you see them working on Give Me Some Truth, which is really interesting. But what's more interesting is the part that Paul plays in this. He's singing a verse on his own, they haven't written. Some of the words are what ended up on the Imagine record, but a lot of them didn't. So they're still kind of working it through. And then George introduces the song All Things Must Pass, and you hear John's on the organ for this, and just the harmonies that Paul and John put on this are just absolutely gorgeous, really, really lovely. I really liked that moment in the film. And then George asks whether they're going to do any old songs in the concert part of it, as he quite rightly says, if you give someone, you go and do a show full of songs that nobody's ever heard before, it's not going to go down as well as if it was a song of, say, new songs, but they've had lived with the album for a little while. Then that's a different story. But they're not going to have that, so there should be some oldies in the songs. And he suggests unusual song, Every Little Thing is a suggestion of his. John suggests possibly Help. And the last sort of notable thing about the day 2 section is that we get a version of I'm So Tired with Paul taking the vocals, and I don't know if it was just me sort of reading too much into it, but just looking at the faces of the others, they're kind of thinking, why is Paul taking centre stage on this John song? Why is he singing it? And obviously that question is not ever resolved, but that's just something that I sort of picked up. I might be reading too much into it. So day 3 starts with a couple of jams, You Wear Women Out and My Imagination, and then they start working on Don't Let Me Down again. And I have to say, during this section, I find Paul to be quite obnoxious. He's obviously in a bad mood, but it's bearing in mind that it's John's song. Paul is taking the lead over a harmony part, and John is being very passive about this. He's not contributing at all, and Paul is taking the lead, and Paul's come up with this harmony for the I'm in love for the first time bit, where John sings I'm in love for the first time, and then there's he's trying to get George and him to harmonise the same word, I'm in love for the first time, after the line. It sounds really cheesy and terrible, and and through that verse, that's how it goes. So there's a call and response sort of thing. It sort of this whole section sort of starts off with Paul trying to tell Ringo how to play the drums on this song, which I'm sure he was perfectly capable of working out for himself. But yeah, so that they keep trying this harmony, and George isn't quite getting it because I don't think he kind of knows that it's a bit rubbish, and he's not really into it. And then Glyn Johns sort of pipes up a suggestion about not having a harmony on the first two lines, but having it on the third and fourth, which incidentally is what happens on the final record. And they try it, and it sounds great. But as soon as they've tried it, Paul's on it again. He wants it how he's arranged it, and that sort of you can see when they go into that, George finally has to say something, and he says, this sounds rubbish, and that just really gets Paul's goat up, and this is the beginning of that famous scene that we see in the Let It Be film, that kind of terminates with George saying, I'll play whatever you want me to play, and if you don't want me to play, I won't play at all. I'll do whatever it is that pleases you. But we've never seen the build up to that. But now we do. But now we do, and it kind of stems from that, and sort of, Paul is, once he says, once George says it's rubbish, Paul starts bringing up things about the Hey Jude, Hey Jude, down, now, when George's trying to put in little lead lines in between each line of Hey Jude, he's harking back to that again, and he's sort of saying I seem to annoy you, which you do see in the Let It Be film, but it kind of peters out. It's just it is just a band. It's not a massive argument, but I just think that Paul is just too pushy on that particular aspect, because it wasn't a good harmony, and he couldn't really see beyond that. But I've played in bands for years, and we're always doing that sort of thing, where you kind of say, well, why don't you just try it like this, and it's just, that's all that's happening. It's just normal sort of band stuff. It's not a big thing, but it was made into a big thing in the Let It Be film. Anyway, enough of that. We then see a still electric version of Two of Us, which sounds great, with Paul on his half the bass, and John and George both on the electric guitars, and that sounds great. And that's day 3. Now day 4 is just absolutely fascinating. I just thought the next section I just thought was brilliant. I don't know if you know the story of Picasso's Last Words, Paul's song on Band on the Run, where he's at a dinner party and Dustin Hoffman is there with his wife, and Dustin Hoffman asks him to write a song on the spot, and he picks up a newspaper or a book or something off the shelf or in the house, and he reads something about Picasso's last words before he dies, and he starts writing the song, and Dustin Hoffman freaks out and says, look, he's doing it. Well, this is kind of what you see on day 4, because John hasn't arrived at Twickenham yet, and Paul, George and Ringo are working on the embryo of the song that is to become Get Back, and we are getting to see Paul writing a song on the spot, and it's absolutely fascinating. I thought it's he hasn't got the words, but by the time John arrives, they've kind of got the rhythm of the song, the call, the chords, the bass part, and it's kind of all there. It just just needs the words working on. But I just thought that was just a fascinating insight into seeing the Beatles working together in the studio. That was a lovely scene. Then we get another interjection from Michael Lindsay Hogg, where he suggests that they do the concert in a hospital for sick children or an orphanage. But he quantifies it by saying not like really sick children, but just ones with broken legs or something. Just ridiculous. But that was that. And then Paul is, Paul again is sort of is getting a bit wound up with everything. George sort of starts off the conversations by saying the band's really been in the doldrums since Mr. Epstein died, and it's really interesting that they both George, Paul, and George after that section all refer to him as Mr. Epstein, not Brian, but Paul mentioned, he says, I don't like being the boss, but I've had to be the boss, since Mr. Epstein died, and he's kind of justifying his bossiness, I guess. But then it cuts to they start working on Maxwell's Silver Hammer. You see Mal Evans with an anvil and a hammer. But before that, they go off to lunch, and as on the way out, Paul says to Mal, "You might want to get an anvil and a hammer," and without telling him why or anything. And Mal Evans just looks completely puzzled by that comment. A bit later, we see the start work on a new version of Across the Universe, and the day 4 sort of ends with them having a run through of rock and roll music. I think this is one of those sections where they don't have. They've got the audio, but they haven't got the visuals for it. So they're obviously the pictures that you see of the band are probably just playing something random, but they kind of intersperse it with pictures of the Beatles playing at the Budokan in Japan on the 1966 World Tour, because they opened that tour with rock and roll music. So I think that's what the significance was, and that's day 4. So day 5 begins with George and Paul and Ringo, and George asks them if they want to hear the song that he wrote last night, and they say yes, and he plays them "I Me Mine." So we hear that for the first time in its infancy, and then we get a sort of when John's arrived, we get a fast version of Two of Us, which is utterly charming. I love it. And then we go back to "I Me Mine," and the three of them are them playing it, and John and Yoko are kind of waltzing around the Twickenham studios, and I think that bit was actually used in the Let It Be film. And then Michael Lindsay Hogg comes up and says to John, do you want to do the waltzing during the show? Which I don't think he answered. I'm not sure. And then Dennis O'Dell comes up to Paul and wants to talk about the set for the show, and he shows him a picture of the around the Beatles show that they did earlier in their career. I don't know if you've seen the picture of it, but it's a kind of 2-tiered effect where you've got people standing on two levels, and the Beatles are down below on the stage, so they're kind of looking down on the stage, and that's what he's suggesting that they recreate. But Paul's not really interested. He says, go and speak to John because he's much more arty. And then you kind of see John. John is getting really involved in the drawing of the would-be set He's on the floor, with a pad, and he's drawing it out with Dennis O'Dell. And while all this is going on, you kind of Paul is at the piano just on his own, and he's just tinkering. And you may have missed it, but what he's playing is just absolutely beautiful. Go back and watch it, because it's kind of in the background. But instead of looking at John on the floor drawing the set, just have a listen to what Paul's playing on the piano, because it's really nice. And that's sort of the main points of day 5. So on day 6, Linda arrives, looking absolutely gorgeous. We see Paul at the piano, playing the very beginnings of Another Day, but more importantly, we hear him tinkering with The Long and Winding Road for the first time. He hasn't got the words there, but all the piano part is there. Mel Evans is sort of leaning on the piano, writing down the words as he sings them, and Mel actually suggests the changing of you left me standing there and don't leave me waiting, which is quite interesting. And then sort of Ringo joins them. He doesn't join Paul on the piano, but he's leaning on the piano with Mal as as Paul's carrying on, trying to work through the song, and you see Linda sort of taking photos of them, which is sort of quite a charming moment. And then you see a bit later Paul working on Golden Slumbers, and then he has Ringo besides him for Carry That Weight, because Carry That Weight he's suggesting is a song for Ringo to sing. Ringo's sort of singing along with the chorus, but there's actually a verse that Paul wants to put in as well. So it's not the Carry That Weight that we know from Abbey Road. It's there's extra bits, and Paul's just, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he's suggesting that it's a bit of a comedy song, and it's things that go wrong. Like he said that you wake up from a dream that you've had, and in the dream you've dreamt that you've got a really big head, and then you find out that it really is your head. And this is what he wants to put in a lyric for Ringo to sing, which was quite amusing. And then we see the introduction of For You Blue for the first time. That's his latest song that he wrote last night. They run through that. Now, if you think, because this is on Disney, it's going to be completely sanitised, it's not. There are words used in this film that Pluto never ever said to Goofy. I can promise you. So they're not, they're obviously allowing swearing in it. And the next section is the bit about Enoch Powell and the sort of the Rivers of Blood speech that he made in 1968 to sort of to incite sort of racial hatred against immigrants in the UK. If you don't know Enoch Powell, he's a sort of he was a right wing politician in the UK at the time, and in fact was the politician that Eric Clapton referred to in his racist rant that he had in the mid 70s when he was playing in Birmingham. And in Clapton's rant, he talks about this Enoch Powell speech. Obviously, the fact that most of Clapton's music, his love of the blues, comes from black people's music, has obviously passed him by completely. But anyway, that's a different subject. But what I wanted to say was that they don't, Paul uses this, and we get a sort of the Get Back song then changed to the sort of the sort of the anti-racist song of sort of No Pakistanis, and the Commonwealth song, you know, the Commonwealth song, but you're too common for me, which is great. Then we see a really great version of She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, where when it gets to the part of so I quit the police department and got myself a steady job. You've got Paul on piano and John on an organ, and as Paul's saying, you know, I quit the police department, got myself a steady job, you know, John is answering each line with something, you know, quite witty. You know, about time you got a job, you dirty cop. And every line in that little section, John's got a response for it, which is lovely to see. We also see Linda and Yoko having a good old natter, which is the first time we actually see Yoko speak. We don't hear her speak because there's music going on in the background, or in the foreground, but they're having a chat with each other. Yoko is there from the start, but she just sits in a chair beside John the whole time, doesn't say anything at all, or doesn't say anything that's been included in the film up to this point. We get Susie Parker, which is great. We get George doing the Bob Dylan song "Mama, You've Been on My Mind." We get a comedy version of Across the Universe, and then we hear Let It Be for the first time. The beginnings of Let It Be, and it's great. And you've got John on bass and doing the harmonies and everything. It's all very nice to watch. So day 7 is the last day of episode 1. And it starts off with the band having a meeting with Dick James, their publisher, talking about the Northern Songs catalogue. We see a bit of a jam of High Heel Sneakers, and we see Get Back, and sort of kind of knowing that this is the day that George leaves the Beatles. I was kind of watching George's, you know, whenever the camera was on George, I was watching how he was, sort of kind of knowing what was coming, but not really knowing how it came about. And to be honest, I'm none the wiser. The only thing that we see that might be something that's going to piss George off is that when they're doing Get Back, and John is playing lead guitar on this, and Paul says to George, you know, just play on the offbeat with Ringo, so it's, you know, get back down, so like that, and he, you know, he does it, and you know, he doesn't complain about it, but something so it could have been something. It could have been that. It could have been, you know, why is John playing lead guitar? I'm the lead guitarist. You know, why is John playing lead guitar on this? Especially as when you go back to the sort of the day 4 when they actually first started working out Get Back, and John wasn't even there. He was late that day, and he wasn't even there. So you can understand if George was a bit pissed off. But the other thing one thing that I've noticed, which I, you know, as a fan, I found absolutely charming and just lovely to watch. Throughout everything that they're playing, you just watch out for this. That John and Paul, they never take their eyes off each other. They are watching each other all the time. They are a team, and that even at this stage in the career, they are playing off each other. And they're working together, but they never, the eye contact is there the whole time. They are watching each other, and maybe George is feeling he's not part of that. I don't know. Anyway, at the end of the morning session, someone says, "Let's go for lunch," and George says, "I think I'm going to be leaving. I'm leaving the band now." Just out of the blue, "I think I'm leaving the band now. You're going to have to get a replacement." And then the screen goes black for a couple of seconds, and then it comes back, and they carry on talking with George, but they're not talking about, don't go, don't go. George is saying, you put an advert in the enemy, get a replacement, and they're talking about his share of the money, and then he's gone. And then they come back after lunch, and Paul says, "I don't even know why we're coming back to this place," but they don't really know what to do with themselves. You see, at one point you see Paul swinging from the scaffolding in the Twickenham studios. He's just using it like a monkey bar sort of thing. But they have a cracker. I've Got a Feeling and Don't Let Me Down, and they are absolutely going for it. They're thrashing the life out of it. Ringo is pounding away at the drums, and they're thrashing their way through it. But there's no joy. Oh, before they start it, they say before they start, I've Got a Feeling. They say, "Take it away, George," and you just see a shot of George's mic with no George. But anyway, it's not very good without George. And then you get Yoko being Yoko. She gets up and she's doing her thing, and the other three are sort of going crazy. They, again, Ringo's pounding away at the drums. Paul is pushing his bass up against his amp, trying to get feedback, and John's thrashing away at his guitar, and and that's pretty much it. Maureen turns up. Maureen Starkey turns up, and they say, "Well, what are we gonna do?" And I think John says, "Well, if he's not back by Tuesday, we'll get Clapton in." And then it comes up with a caption with the calendar going to the sort of Sunday where they had a meeting with George at Ringo's house, and then it just said it didn't go well, and then there's a play out with a few stills of the three of them with George's sort of demo of "Isn't It a Pity" playing, so it's quite a poignant sort of end. And that is it. That's it for episode 1. So I hope you've enjoyed the review of it. I know it's probably gone on quite a long time. I'll be back tomorrow to do episode 2. So please join me for that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you tomorrow for episode 2. Thanks for watching.